Welcome back to the testing of the saw back buoy, a $25 knife from Amazon. Again, this is not me ripping up Amazon or ripping up a cheap knife because I think it has its place. But we're going to do some tests and then we're going to compare it. And the reason we're even doing this is because even though not everybody can afford a $400, $500, $600 knife, those who can afford more than a $25 knife should consider that. And I think it's a test to the quality difference between what you can buy from the factory and what you can get from a Bladesmith. So we're going to test it on some paper, we're going to test it on a brass rod, and we're going to test the sawback, which isn't really even a sawback, it's just a shaped spine. But anyway, first let's do a couple tests to establish, before testing the edge, the sharpness. Okay, so let's see. All right, let's be fair, let's keep going. It's a little windy. Okay, so it cuts, but what we're going to do is we're going to examine the cuts. I'm not sure how much you can see of that, but it is relatively sharp. Not bad, to be expected. You see it kind of rips a little bit. See there's a little bit of tearing. You see there, it's a little bit of folding over where it's cut. I don't know if you can tell that in the video or not. And the edges are just not like sheared clean. They're kind of ripped, which is fine. Let's do the test of the tip. All right, not super sharp. Okay, which is fine. Okay. Now if you can hear it well too, you'll hear that instead of a nice clean whooshing slash, it kind of rips through, which is to be expected again on a $25 knife. But there you have the basic, the preliminary test done for the sharpness on the edge. Now let's cut some brass tubing or some brass rods and see how it does against that. Okay, so here's a before. Okay. Yeah. Let's go test it. Okay, we are going to try and be fair and acknowledge that $25 is not a lot to spend on a knife. So keep that in mind as we test it. But let's test cutting a brass rod against this blade using a stump as our stop. Okay, right off the bat, there's a lot of rattle. Anyways, okay, let's get to it. Well, hi, puppy dog. Well, I don't know if you can tell, but that's not supposed to happen. Before we talk about the obvious here, you know, I should be a judge on Forged in Fire. Let's just say that. Before we talk about the obvious, let's look at the rod. Okay, it's 3/16, so it's not that big a deal, but it bit into it a good amount. Probably would have done a lot more damage if it hadn't had an issue, we'll say. The cutting edge, keep in mind this is a stainless steel, a Chinese stainless, so it's not, you know, really strong. But for one chop, it took a little deflection. It catches on my fingernail, so it didn't do super great. But let's zoom in. I don't know if you can see this. Let's look at our issue. One of the big issues is that the tang is absolutely tiny. Very, very skinny tang for what is supposed to be a robust survival knife. The other issue is that if you look right here, you can actually see a pocket, a crack. There's a delamination right where that gap is. So the gapping probably didn't help at all, because you need it right and tight in order for it to not cause any stress risers. There's just there's no getting around that I broke on one hit. So this video series is going to be a lot shorter than I anticipated. But yeah, so I guess it's not worth 25 bucks. Edge took damage from one hit on a brass rod, and it snapped in half one hit. That's probably what that rattling was, honestly, and is uncomfortable, and it's just profiled terribly. As much as I support cheap knives, I cannot support cheap knives in certain situations. I cannot support this one. So my review obviously is a 0 out of 10. I guess I can still go forward with making my version of it, but that was a shorter series than I expected. So whatever. Let me know in the comments if you want me to make my version of this and test it in the same way, see how it does. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever, wherever. You get the point. Thanks, guys.